United we fall, a story of family, of betrayal, of trust, of unity, of survival. An original audiobook. Chapter 9. She vowed to never cry again, at least not over this situation anymore. Tonight, she would have her closure. She was finally going to get the answers that she desperately needed. The atmosphere was a lot more relaxed now in the room where the two men sat talking. He was no longer crying as the conversation shifted to the subject of food. His friend offered him sandwiches and cold beer. They ate, drank, and relaxed quietly. She answered the knock at her door and invited the attractive woman into her home, trying not to be too obvious as she looked the woman over, carefully examining her. If the woman was checking her out in return, she was certainly doing a fine job of concealing it. "Welcome to my home," she said as she offered the woman a seat at her kitchen table, where 2 glasses and a bottle of wine was waiting. "Would you like something to drink?" she offered. "Yes, thank you," the woman answered, adding, "You have a lovely place." "Thank you," she replied. For the next 20 or so minutes, the 2 women chatted about a variety of unimportant things. She found herself almost liking this woman, her husband's mistress. They laughed and smiled a lot. Their rapport was very natural and pleasant. "Look at you, afraid to talk about what really matters," the voice in her head interrupted the peaceful atmosphere. "Could you be any more pathetic?" "Shut up, nobody's afraid," she told the voice in her head. In no time at all, the first bottle of wine were empty, and they were working on a second bottle. In fact, it was her guest who was consuming the lion's share of the drink. "You should have poisoned that wine. Better yet, take that empty bottle and hit her upside her pretty little head," the voice said in a very serious tone. "Oh, that's right, you're not a real woman. You're just a nice little doormat," the voice continued. "Or have you forgotten who your new friend really is?" The men had begun talking again, but their words came few and far between. They discussed sports, the weather, and just about anything except what they really wanted to talk about, which was the husband's recently confessed marriage troubles. Their conversation was filled with long, awkward periods of silence, which finally got to be too much for the best friend, who said, "Dude, what's really going on? You know you can talk to me." "I know that, it's just that, the husband began. "I really don't know how I feel. I mean, I do know how I feel. I just have so many different feelings that it's hard to sort out." His friend sat and just listened. "You know what I'm saying, right?" he asked. "Not really. Just slow down and tell me what you're trying to say," his best friend said. "I just don't know if I should stay or go. I mean, it's really hard to walk away from everything that I've known for the past 11 years, especially when there was nothing really wrong with the relationship in the first place," he said. "Not to mention the fact that I really don't know anything about this other girl. But here I am, throwing my whole life away for a feeling." "Do you love this new girl?" his buddy asked. "I'm not sure," he answered. "Seriously, if you had to choose right now, would it be yes or no?" his buddy prodded. "I guess if I were forced to make a decision, I would say, no, I don't love her. But I do think I'm falling in love with her. I do love my wife, though, and I miss my family and my life very badly right now," he answered. Both men now sat shaking their heads, once again in silent thought. The ladies were very relaxed now. The visitor had taken her shoes off, as they were laughing so much that a passerby would mistake these two for a couple of very good friends. "Can I use your facilities?" the visitor asked. "Sure you can," she answered, and she resisted the urge to provide directions to the restroom. "I'll just freshen up our drinks," she said instead. "Great idea. I'll be right back," her guest said as she got up and walked straight to the bathroom. "I guess that answers your question, doesn't it?" The voice in her head spoke again. "What question?" she asked the voice. "Don't be a complete fool. That woman who has never been in your house before is just walking around like she knows the place by heart. She sat quietly for a moment, frowning and considering what the voice had said. On her way back to the kitchen, the mistress passed the bedroom and noticed the lights on. She peeked in and saw her host sitting on the bed with her head in her hands, looking distressed. "Hey, what's going on in here?" the mistress asked as she entered the room. "She's been in your house," the voice said. The wife quickly raised her head and wiped her eyes. "Oh, nothing. Too much wine, I guess," she said with a slight forced giggle to her voice. "She made love to your husband in your bed," said the voice. The mistress sat down, put her arm around the wife and said, "It's okay, hon. This kind of thing happens all the time. You're a good woman. You'll bounce back. Trust me. I've been right where you are, and I know what I'm talking about." "She is destroying your family," the voice said. "Oh, really?" the wife said with a look of disbelief on her face now. She stood up and put her finger disrespectfully close to the mistress's face and said angrily, "How the hell would you know how I feel?" "Hold on, baby," the woman said, now brandishing an attitude of her own. "Don't put your hand in my face. You don't know me like that." The mistress rose to her feet and smacked away the wife's hand. The two women stood face to face now. "Don't blame me because you can't keep your man," the mistress said. "I knew that I shouldn't have come here. Something told me that you'd be a childish bitch about this," she continued. "You're lucky that I'm a class act and I'm leaving before somebody gets hurt." "Get her," said the voice. "Putting your hand in my face. You don't know who I am, baby," the mistress raved. Do it now, kill her," the voice inside her head yelled. "You low-class, ugly, fat tramp." The mistress continued to explode as she headed toward the door. She walked slowly, watching her footing, aware of the alcohol's influence on her balance. The mistress stopped suddenly, and her legs began to tremble. The butcher's knife's blade found its target deep between her shoulder blades. The shock of this sudden, unexpected attack, mixed with way too much drink, left her in a catatonic state, unable to scream or run. Before her impaired brain could process the situation and adjust, the knife struck another blow, this time slashing across her throat. Another blow quickly pierced her side as she fell to the floor. "That was easy," the voice said coldly, and she agreed. It had taken less than 2 minutes to rid the world of this menacing home wrecker. "Ding dong, the witch is dead," played absurdly in her head, and surprisingly she felt no remorse. Instead, she felt relief. "So much for that smug little bitch," the voice said. Strangely, the voice this time was her own voice. The guys continued discussing the philosophies of looking out for number one versus doing what's best for everyone involved. Their conversation was serious but not heated. Although they were now comfortably and freely talking, it was apparent that nothing was being accomplished. "So do you love this new girl?" his best friend asked, trying to guide their discussion toward a conclusion. "I think so. I'm pretty sure," the husband answered. "I know I love the way she makes me feel," he continued. "Yeah, but do you love her, yes or no?" his friend persisted. "If I honestly had to choose right this moment, I think I would have to say no." "Do I love her?" "No. I love my wife. But I do think that I'm falling in love with this girl," the husband said. "So if you could only have one woman, who would it be?" the best friend asked. "And could you live with your decision for the rest of your life?" "Man, I miss my family and my wife so badly right now," the husband said. "Maybe if she and I could just talk, we could work things out. But she won't forgive me, and I really can't blame her." His cell phone rang, interrupting him. The caller ID showed his wife's name. She had quickly changed clothes and wiped the blood off her hands and face. The wine glasses were in the sink, and now that her bedroom door was closed, there was no visible evidence that a crime had occurred in her home tonight. She still felt good. She was slightly surprised that she hadn't suddenly awakened to discover that this was all just a dream. She had even opened the bedroom door once to make sure the mistress's body hadn't suddenly vanished. "Yep, still there," she said to herself almost laughingly. Call him, the voice demanded. In an almost robot-like motion, she picked up her phone and dialed her husband's number. He answered. Hello? Hi, do you have a minute to talk? I couldn't sleep, she said. Yes, I do. I'm glad that you called, he replied. I'm glad that you answered. I need to talk, baby. I don't feel good about the way things are between us. I'm sorry that I've been so rude to you. Can you please come over here and talk to me? She said. No, baby, it's not your fault. I'm to blame, he told her. If you want me to, I can be there in 10 minutes. Hurry, she told him. Then she hung up the phone. He gave his best friend the details of the phone conversation, gathered his things, and rushed out the door. As he sat down in his car, he felt relieved. He was feeling a little woozy from the alcohol, a little tired from a long day, and oddly enough, he felt a little aroused. After all, it was 3 a.m. and he'd just gotten a call from the woman that he loved, inviting him over to her house. He laughed at himself. He had a lot of nerve to even entertain the thought of the two of them making love. You never know, he told himself. The drive to his house had been unconscious, and before he knew it, he was standing in the kitchen looking at his wife. She was as lovely as ever, he noted. They stood there for a full minute, just looking at each other without speaking a word. He was tired and swayed slightly. He wasn't sure she noticed it, but she grabbed his hand and began to lead him toward their bedroom. Baby, he started, but she quickly put a finger up in front of his mouth in a shushing motion. No, she told him. No talking. He smiled and followed her cooperatively. As they arrived at the bedroom door, she stepped aside, their eyes locked. He moved forward and opened the door, never taking his eyes off his beautiful wife. The same wife that he had betrayed and hurt. He was almost 6 feet into the room when he nearly tripped over something. He turned to see what it was, and his mouth fell open as he looked upon the lifeless body of the other woman in his life. He fell to the floor, not because he wanted to see if the girl was really dead, nor was it because of the absolute shock and horror of the bloody scene. He had fallen because his loving wife had pushed him, and she was now lunging at him with a bloody knife in hand. She stabbed him. She only got his hand, though. Unlike in her dream, he was fighting back, but she was determined. Her next blow caught him in the leg as he scurried away from her. He was yelling, and the sound of it mixed with her screaming added to the total insanity of the moment. In his effort to defend himself and escape, he was crashing into furniture and knocked over a lamp. Her knife caught him in the other leg. As he now backed into a corner on his back, the knife punctured his side and a blinding pain shot through his entire body, weakening him. He was on the verge of giving up, seeing no way out. He was well beyond fear now as she straddled him. Blood was pouring out of him, and he was in a lot of pain, but he still tried to fight back. He pushed and grabbed at her, but she would not be stopped. The blank expression on her face made her look to him like some sort of porcelain doll from hell. This thought almost made him laugh, but instead, tears fell from his eyes. She raised the knife high above her head, holding it with both hands, preparing for the death stroke. "Baby, please," he whimpered in a final desperate plea for mercy. She paused, and he saw her expression change channels. Was it pity that he now saw in her eyes? He had only a moment to wonder, because the blank look returned, and she cried out angrily, "Cheater!" as she thrust the butcher knife downward towards his defenseless body. Then a gunshot rang out, and then another. Her body jerked in response to the bullets ripping through her back. Her face asked a question that she wouldn't live long enough to get an answer to. She fell over onto the floor dead. The husband used his last remaining energy to lift up his head and see his 10-year-old son holding a smoking revolver in his hands. "I thought I heard him crying out," he thought as he slipped away into death's awaiting embrace. He joined his wife. They would be together now. for all of eternity.